few things more devastating than when you take your property to market or you have an agent or a valuer come in to give you a valuation post-renovation and they turn around and they say to you, Rowan, sorry, that's not a habitable space. And most people are like, what? What do you mean it's not habitable? It's got walls, it's got windows, it's got doors.
Yeah.
I can live there. I'm short enough.
In fact, I have lived there for the last 3 months of my renovation. What are you talking about?
Exactly. But there's more to it than that. There are legislations around how high our ceilings need to be deemed habitable. And it's really important to check around the country, for example, state by state in regard to if you are on selling your real estate laws, because there are all different laws around whether you can market a habitable space or not. So I know a property that I once sold, I renovated and flipped it. Its downstairs space was 2.5 centimetres too short to be deemed habitable. It was a downstairs space, so I made it into like a rumpus room den, but I couldn't spend too much money on it because for the wrong buyer, they would have gone, not habitable, not part of the footprint, doesn't count. So that wasn't actually, in that property, it wasn't actually able to be marketed as a second living space. It was only able to be marketed as storage space. So check that in your local state and your real estate laws. But what we're talking about here today with Rowan, expert and know all, tradie and chippy, is, man, what's this about habitable spaces?
Habitable
and
spaces,
ceiling heights?
yes, and ceiling heights. So the Building Code of Australia is pretty much the overarching documentation that we refer to when we talk about things like, well, it goes in layers, like I was explained to you before. The Australian standard is the bare minimum, and then the BCA will override that if there's changes that the BCA put on top of the legislation that the Australian standards has, and then over on the top of that, there'd be various state legislations as well that might be pertinent to.
Man, that sounds freaky. Just saying.
It's not too challenging, but when you're renovating, you should be getting certification on some of this stuff anyway.
Absolutely. So we need to hammer that home.
Yeah. So your building certifier should be the one that's picking this stuff up, people. So if you want to make sure you're ticking all the boxes, you go through your certifier.
Hold on, though. There can be some works that you might be doing to a property that don't need certification.
No, that's true.
And so, for example, in that one I talked about, I literally painted, I carpeted.
Didn't change it at all.
I redid a kitchen.
Yeah.
There was no structural change.
Yep.
So I actually had no need for a certifier in. I actually knew when I bought it, it was not habitable. Otherwise, I knew that.
Yep.
But a lot of people mightn't have, especially when it's literally 2.5 centimetres.
Yeah, that's
and so people, if you're going to be doing even a cosmetic renovation or looking at a house to buy, even if it's your forever home, you need to be really aware whether the spaces in it are habitable or not.
And you can find a lot of this stuff out online, or you can just make the phone call. A lot of people are quite happy to give you the advice over the phone. You just get a quick overview of what's required, and they can set you on the straight and narrow pretty quickly. So, yes. So, in answer to your question, legal ceiling heights,
right?
Habitable rooms, they are dictated by the BCA Building Code of Australia to be a habitable room is somewhere like a living space. A bedroom,
yep.
Music room, a rumpus room,
yep.
Media room.
Somewhere you hang out.
Yeah. And in a space that's deemed habitable, the legal ceiling height is 2.4 metres.
All right. But
big but.
What about like kitchens, bathrooms, laundries?
Although you hang out in the kitchen a lot, believe it or not, it's not deemed under legislation to be a habitable room. So they're saying that you don't spend a significant amount of time there.
In the olden days, maybe.
Yeah. But now we live in the kitchen. So
that's right. So what's the legal ceiling height there?
2.1.
Okay, which is substantially different.
Very much lower. That's another foot. That's another 300 mil, roughly lower. And you'll know yourself, ceiling space can massively increase the feeling of space inside a room. So
absolutely.
But
and does it drop lower than that?
Well, it can do, but it depends on the purpose of the room. So if it's a storage room or something like that, or it's a specialist room like an attic space or something like that, there's other legislation that that comes into play when we're talking about that, and you can get special dispensation for that. 2.2 metres, for example, on a stairwell from the top of a tread to ceiling height is the standard legislation there. Ceilings in attic spaces, there's a bit of grey area there, but in general, 50% of it has to be at least 2.1 metres. So yeah,
because often obviously it's
they're on the rake and things like that. Yep. So, but yeah, when it comes to non-habitable spaces and habitable spaces, check your figures because, it can come back to bite you.
So this can be fantastic in a couple of ways, really. So from my perspective, when you're house shopping, this can be an amazing bargaining tool.
Absolutely.
A huge bargaining tool. So if you, for example, are in a state where, or this is the national code, so that's a no-brainer. But for example, I know that, that it's not okay to really market an extra bedroom, for example. I went to a place the other week and they marketed it as 4 bedrooms and 3 living areas. And so the first bedroom, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a bedroom. Second bedroom, I'm like, oh, it's a small bedroom. Third bedroom had no window, which is another kettle of fish. Another kettle of fish we'll cover another day. So not habitable space.
Not a habitable space.
And the next bedroom was probably a 2-metre ceiling, if that. I'm like, not a habitable space, dude. And the agent was floored. He's like, what do you mean it's not a habitable space? It's a bedroom. I'm like, it's not a habitable space. I will not buy this as a 4-bedroom. It is a 2-bedroom. Funnily enough, the third and second living space, I could touch the ceiling. I'm 164 centimetres high. So that's not a high ceiling space. So what was being marketed as a 4-bedroom, 3 living space was actually a 2-bedroom, 1 living space with a pile of bad extensions. And so it goes both ways. Powering yourself with this knowledge.
Knowledge is power.
In this circumstance, it really is, because you've got to remember, even if you're like, oh, it doesn't matter to me, I really want the house anyway, if for some reason you needed to on-sell it or even get it valued.
Or get it certified. Because if you're doing more than a certain percentage of renovations, by default, legally, you have to bring everything up to code.
And so you're carrying the bag, is what we're saying?
Yeah, you could get left with the bag. So be really careful, guys and girls. Just check your facts and figures.
And know what you're getting into.
Know what you're getting into.
And you know what? Let's put a positive spin on that. Use this knowledge to get better bargains, do better renovations, and have more fun.
Screw them down.
Hey renovators, if you're ready to take the next step in your renovation journey, then come learn how to renovate with me in my online renovation masterclass. It's completely free for all of you listeners. So if you want to discover how to renovate properties for profit, head over to naomifindlay.com/renovation masterclass, where I'll show you how the 7 steps to my winning rapid renovation formula create a 6-figure income for me and many of my students. So save your spot today. Remember, it's naomifindlay.com/renovation masterclass. See you soon.